The Xtender. The first case by Arctic. What is this? Don't they know about double boxing? Well, this cracked real nicely. Look at that. We have some internal scratches on the protective film. Hopefully the TG is protected. All good. This is also a little strange. There's a big gash in the protective film on the interior of the front panel glass. How did it get there? This didn't come from me. The glass is fine though. Now, packaging aside, the Xtender feels very safe for their first enclosure, which makes sense. They don't want to go too loud, and knowing Arctic and what they've done with AIOs, CPU coolers, thermal paste, everything has a great place in terms of price and performance. But not the Xtender, because from a design point of view, there's nothing inherently Arctic about this enclosure. It looks very much like all the other cases we've seen in the past from NZXT. It has quite big similarities to like some deep cool enclosures as well. Price-wise, this thing is insanely expensive for 2025 release that doesn't bring anything especially new to the table. At $200 for non-VG and $220 for the VG model. Ouch. Ouch. Double ouch. The $20 extra VG model gets you a vertical GPU mount. And the case will be available in 3 colors. The mirror black looks awesome, but unfortunately that's not available just yet. And it's true that the included 5 fans add value to the case, and therefore if you were to buy 5 fans on a $100 enclosure, you might as well be reaching that $200 price point. So you kind of have to decide where you sit on that conversation. Personally, I would love a non-RGB version that is like $40 cheaper. Make it happen, please. But Arctic is a cooling specialist, which is why I don't want to discard the Xtender as just another enclosure. Let's take a deeper dive. And can we talk about the name for a second, the Xtender? Not to be confused with stuff that spam emails keep recommending me, but the case is absolutely massive. And I feel like I am done with giant cases, especially when they don't do optimization right. And Arctic does not deliver here at all. I always do appreciate an accessory box with all the items labeled and everything nicely organized on the interior, but no paper manual. Honestly, the digital manual is not too bad. We have all the proper information that is displayed. It's clear. You can even change the languages. You can even print your own user guide. The most useful thing here is the GPU compatibility list. This is one of the first few cases to include glass on the interior of the enclosure on our power supply shroud. They're trying to spice things up, but so first of all, this thing is removable. It is completely taped up for shipping so it doesn't fall out, and I find it completely pointless. I didn't even realize the glass piece was illuminated at the bottom simply because the RGB connector was completely hidden right underneath the power supply. Even their digital user manual does not list that you have an RGB connector for that bottom glass piece, which is a giant fail. Even in the content overview that lists all the removable parts, it doesn't say that the glass is removable, and nor does it say that it is illuminated from the bottom. Illuminated glass on the interior that isn't fully solid, it just has slight color variation throughout. Whatever. They definitely have not skimped out on build quality, because even with all of our side panels removed, look at this. Absolutely no flexing on this top corner, which is usually a weak point for enclosures like this that have no supporting structure in this right corner. But the frame here, even though it is completely riveted, you cannot remove anything. It is incredibly solid. Now, this is a pretty seriously chunky ventilation pattern, which is actually going to benefit our noise profile. I mean, I hope so. At least the ventilation pattern at the top is symmetrical from left and right for that visual consistency, and we have that built-in I/O at the top. The side ventilation has 2 extra rows, but they kind of make no sense because it extends way beyond where the fans actually lie. We are over here in our cable management area, so you can see those cables peeking through because of this illumination. And actually, in fact, you can see the fans are cut off from where the ventilation begins over here. So this is a really odd layout and design. The coolest thing on the interior, aside from the reverse 140mm fans, which are RGB, that's kind of rare to see, we do have dual 120mm exhaust fans at the back to give you that sense of scale. Obviously, we have the VG model with the vertical GPU bracket and the PCI riser cable, which I would advise against because this layout makes no sense for a vertical GPU. Simply because we have this massive power supply chamber that is lifting the graphics card towards our CPU area, either CPU cooler or an AIO cooler. So obviously it's going to bump into our AIO pump or just a general heatsink. Because normally with cases that prioritize prioritized vertical GPU mount, we would see it on dual chamber enclosures where the power supply is moved to the back and you have more clearance underneath the motherboard to not interfere with our CPU coolers. But here, this is a little bit challenging, especially with Arctic's own AIOs where the tubes are facing down and the actual pump is quite chunky. So anything larger than my RTX 3080 in height will not fit here. And now it makes sense why we have that GPU compatibility list, because with the Freezer 3 AIO, not all graphics cards will fit. We also don't have any flexibility for the vertical GPU mount. It is in one position only. So if you want to have your graphics card slightly away from the motherboard to, let's say, clear out some AIO tubes, that is not possible. It is locked in one position only. Luckily, the bracket is simply removable if you want to go with horizontal GPU instead of vertical. And we do have our PCIe covers included in part of our accessories. It's just unfortunate for a case of this size, you can't fit larger than average graphics cards, you know? And my plastic broke off from the actual supporting piece for the back there. So yeah, I had some issues with vertical GPU mounting, but to my surprise, both in my test system configuration and also my standard gaming configuration, the vertical GPU performed way better in temperatures. Definitely the case looks better with the vertical GPU because it just fills in more space, but you have to be careful not to bump into your AIO pump, but good luck with that. Graphics cards are getting so massive. In my gaming configuration, the temperatures are basically the same with non-VG versus the VG configuration, but look at the fan speed on the graphics card. It is way lower in the vertical configuration and it's running at the same temperature, which means that you're getting way better performance. I'm guessing because those side ventilation fans do deliver quite a lot of air. But in my test system configuration, you can see a massive drop in temperatures for the GPU when we are looking at VG versus non-VG configuration. The CPU temperatures don't really matter at this point because any 360 or 420 IO would be sufficient enough, but I am quite impressed at how much more airflow gets delivered with our vertical GPU, but they're also loud, which means running them at 100% makes absolutely no sense. Make sure to run them at like 40 and you'll be fine. The top panel can easily accommodate a 360 rad, but removing this little plate will give us access for a 420 radiator installation. And we have exactly the same fan bracket for the side ventilation in case you want to downsize from 140s to 120s. Weirdly, this bracket cannot be installed on the opposite side in case you want the 120mm fans for some reason closer to the motherboard, even though we do have the tiny holes on the opposite side for that fan bracket installation. The curvature of the frame here does not allow this fan bracket to sit flush, and therefore you can't put this in its proper place. Weird. And one thing you have to keep in mind if you are mounting 140mm fans is like where to store this additional fan bracket. And one thing I found is that if you rotate it, you can screw it back down without interfering with our top bracket, just so that you don't have to worry about storing it anywhere without interfering with the screw mounts. At the rear, we do have a spare fan bracket to convert the side fan mount from 140s to 120s, although why would you do that? The case already comes with fans. The Velcro straps are really strong and are long enough to house like plenty of cables underneath, but all these cables that are default, the stock cables are plenty and already occupying like a majority of this cable management space. It's nice to see a dedicated storage bracket, but I feel like it might be a little too close to our power supply. And this is incredibly bizarre on the Xtender because we have no ventilation pattern underneath the power supply. You can see there's like a little stencil cutout that's supposed to maybe get removed through manufacturing, but this is all completely blocked. For these two storage spots behind the motherboard, I don't mind the lack of any sort of brackets to mount your hard drives or SSDs, just because we have these little rubber grommets that allow you to install it either up or down depending on how you want to route the cables. But for $200+ I was expecting something slightly more sophisticated, you know? Looks like before motherboard installation, our graphics card holder has to come out, or at least this extension piece. Well, this is disappointing. Not a single captive motherboard standoff. The giant standoff is going back in, and this is way easier to do with the entire bracket removed. My least favorite thing by far with the Xtender are the cables. Because for case fans that are daisy chainable and also have the RGB connection, you'd think that the brand would put in the effort to cable manage that for you. But nope, here you have to do it yourself, and it's a giant mess. They list their rubber grommets as 3D cable pass-throughs, which is useless because they're below average. And this entire section, because of all the stock cables, is an absolute nightmare to work with, especially because none of it is pre-routed for you. Even the two rear fans were not daisy-chained already together, and the cable for that fan is so short, you better hope you have a 4-pin cable connector available in that space, or have an extension ready, because none are included. Perhaps the Xtender name is fitting, because your cable management excuses need more room too. The cable management here is an absolute nightmare to work with. The best thing about the Xtender is the build quality, and the cooling performance is outstanding, sure, because the fans move a lot of air, but they're also incredibly loud. You don't want to be running them at 100% anyway. But I wish that we got a non-RGB version that was slightly cheaper, that still focused on performance, because all of their other AIOs and CPU coolers that have even the RGB elements to them are still striking that balance between price to performance. But the Xtender completely missed the mark when it comes to price to performance. I think it's way overpriced to what the market expects on a new release, especially when it comes to their first case product. But let me know if you agree. I'm Dmitry. I'll talk to you in the next video.